This is episode 93 of Brain Software with Mike Mandel, and I'm Chris Thompson. It's time to ride the wire. It's a rich, red, robust wire. It jangles with hidden meaning, even that one. Oh, whatever happened to that old tranquility we used to know? These are days of victory!
It's cold out on the grassy knoll, Mr. Zapruder.
Stop the Jack Ruby jokes. You're still just Danny.
Yeah, I guess so, Dad.
Welcome, fellow storm riders. You are now a rider on the very catwalk of the only storm you'll ever need. So let go of your Brussels sprouts, sit back and relax, and whoa, this stuff really comes out. Here he is, our fearful leader. He's the creator of mindscaping.
That's me.
He's the living scarecrow of hypnosis. And his favorite Johnny is Johnny Brookman Ding Tilasia. Here he is, ladies and gentlemen, Mike Mandel.
Yes, Christopher, and you're absolutely right. My favorite Johnny is Johnny Brookman Ding Tilasia.
Well, of course he is. He's the coolest Johnny of them all.
What are we going to talk about today, Chris?
All right, so today, folks, episode 93 of Brain Software, we have a great podcast on energetic therapy.
Oh, good one.
So this is a topic that is interesting, perhaps controversial. Some people find it a bit woo-woo, but we're going to make sure that it comes across clear and easy to understand, and we're going to make sure that we give you some awesome value. Before we do, we just want to make sure that you know people are already signing up for HypnoThoughts Live 2018.
Las Vegas, Nevada.
This August in Las Vegas. It's going to be amazing. Mike and I are going to be returning for the 4th year in a row, and it is an awesome conference. It is a newbie-friendly conference. So if you are a total beginner and you're listening to this podcast and you're fascinated by hypnosis and you can get your butt out to Las Vegas, it's a great place to make amazing hypnosis friends, learn about hypnosis over 3 full days, and prior to the conference, the Thursday before it starts, you can come and do Mindscaping certification with us. All of the details you will find at mikemandelhypnosis.com/events.
Fantastic, Chris. And as you know, HypnoThoughts Live is the world's foremost hypnosis conference. Scott Sandlin and Richard White.
Richard White is a different Richard.
It's different Richard. Richard White has nothing whatever to do with it, but hi if you're listening.
Richard White is an awesome Richard.
He is, but he's not Richard Clark. Anyway, let's edit that out. Okay, now that that's edited out.
Are we going to actually edit that out? No.
Anyway, come check it out. Mindscaping will be really useful for you if you're a coach, a social worker, a hypnotherapist, a psychologist. People are getting unbelievable results with this. Even things like long-term illnesses are disappearing. I'm not kidding. I'm only telling you what they tell me. So go ahead.
All right. So let's start with our discussion of energetic therapy.
Okay.
Mike, what's the intro?
Well,
how did all this start?
This all started for me.
Hey, start talking about it now.
Well, this all started for me in like 1995, I guess. I was doing different therapies. I was doing NLP, and my master training I just done, my trainer track came later. But I was interested in all these different things, being a hypnotist for frickin' ever. And my wife got a flyer, I don't even know where from, and she said, there's a man called Willem Lammers who's teaching something called meridian-based psychotherapy. And she read it to me. I thought, this sounds wacky. I don't know. She said, well, it's only a weekend. The price is reasonable. Why don't you check it out? You might learn something. So I wasn't quite the open-minded man then that I am now, but I went and checked it out. And I was the guy he demonstrated on. As I said many times, he asked for someone who had a problem that they could talk about publicly, but wasn't a screaming phobia. And I picked this thing where I had to have my dog euthanized, and it had really caused me a lot of emotional pain, maybe just after that, I guess. What am I saying? Just before that. So this must be 96, Chris. I'm saying the dog was put down in 96. This was shortly after that. So bottom line is, he brings me up to the front, gets me to tell a story of taking my wonderful bull terrier in who had seizures and stuff and he couldn't survive it. And he walks me through this process where I talk about it, tap on my forehead, my hand, all these things. I'm wondering what he's doing. All of a sudden, he says, okay, talk about it now. And it was gone. And I said, it's gone. He said, yes, it is gone. I said, no, it's gone. The emotion's gone. He said, yes, it is supposed to be gone. That is why we are doing this.
So is this one of these things where you came up almost in tears talking about having to...
choking back like the emotion. It was so horrible. And it just released a negative emotion. But what amazed me was it unhooked the bad kinesthetic from the visual memory and the auditory memory. So I can remember it now rationally without any pain. So what he said to us, the way he offered the model, was that in this model of therapy, it's trauma being stored right brain, and over time, 80% of people get over trauma, even grief, which is a horrible thing, fear, anger, sadness, trauma, grief. And he said, but the belief is that it's an electromagnetic disturbance in the right brain. And by tapping on these Chinese medicine acupuncture points in a certain algorithm, tapping sequence, in other words, what you're doing is discharging this electromagnetic flux into the amygdala, where it's given a linguistic tag, into the hippocampus, where it's now given a context in your life, which timeline therapy does too, and a lot of good therapies do. Then it's moved into the left brain through the parahippocampal gyrus, through Broca's area, which is the speech center, and it becomes rationalized in your front left brain. And it now has a context in your life. It becomes rational, and it is no longer treated as an ongoing disturbance. It's a past event. And so that's his theory on it. And he taught us the basis of this, which came from, of course, brilliant Roger Callahan, who's an American psychologist. It's classic now, the story of how this all happened. I'm sure it's grown as the telling has gone on. But the bottom line is his patient, I think her name was Mary, hydrophobia, not the rabies side, but the fear of water.
Water, right.
And he was using systematic desensitization, where she's looking through the sliding door, glass door of his place, into or at a swimming pool, which had water. Now, this woman would have panic attacks when it rained. Her hydrophobia was so severe. And he would just get her to look at it, and then he was moving her closer to the glass door and trying to get her to relax, and then opening the door a bit and trying to get her to relax. And she suddenly said, "Dr. Callahan, I feel like I'm going to be sick. I'm going to vomit." He thought that was a weird response, but he knew that the stomach meridians were right underneath the eye. He got her to tap those stomach meridians to get rid of her nausea, but her fear disappeared at the same time, which is an extreme case that it was that quick. But I have seen things very similar.
So that's how he got interested in this?
That's how he got interested. And Callahan,
sort of like the inventor of Post-it notes. So it meant to be a real glue in it, and it failed. And in this case, it's the opposite.
Exactly the same, but not remotely
accidental
connected.
Discovery.
No. Yeah, accidental discovery. We'll give it that. So anyway, Callahan, some have said he should have gotten the Nobel Prize for discovering this. And I think he may well have deserved it. But he went on to create thought field therapy, which was tapping all these different algorithms for different things. And there were about 13 points. So under the eye, under the arm, collarbone. Then he added this neurolymphatic reflex on the left side of the chest, all these different things. And there were different algorithms for everything. So if the person has a simple trauma, you tap these 3. Or if the person has addictive cravings like smoking, you tap this sequence. And he was getting mind-blowing results. Now enter Gary Craig. So TFT, thought field therapy, is out there. Gary Craig studies it with Callahan, and Gary Craig says, well, wait a minute. He was an engineer and an NLP master practitioner. And Craig said, why are we trying to figure out which of these meridians is the one that has the so-called disruption? Why don't we just tap on all of them? And if there's no disruption, there's no problem. It's like if you've got a messy drawer, you don't have to try to figure out which one it is. Drawers full of drawers. Yeah, dump them all out. Yeah. They're all clear. So he then came up with a very clever thing called EFT. So you're tapping
emotional freedom technique.
Right. So you're tapping the corner of the eyebrow, the outer corner of the eye, under the
all
nose,
these spots,
on the chin, collarbone, etc. About 13 spots. And he got amazing results. Now, back in those days, people thought you had to have a positive affirmation. It was something to do with brain balancing. They had people humming and tapping and rolling their eyes in different directions. And Sylvia Hartman says, it's none of these things. It's energetic medicine. It doesn't depend on saying a proper affirmation. It doesn't depend on muscle testing or any of these. She thought that was all window dressing that was brought in. So back in those days, you'd roll your eyes and you'd hum happy birthday and count to 6 and trying to balance your brain. And as Larry Nims said, he hadn't done that stuff in years and got exactly the same results. So Gary Craig brilliantly got everybody doing this, but he made what I call the Gary Craig error, where he said,
I know what you're talking about.
He said all negative emotions are a disruption of the body's energy system. Then he found out that some physical problems responded too. So instead of then thinking the obvious, maybe physical problems also have disruptions in the energy system, which is what Chinese medicine says, he said, all physical problems have an emotional root. He's gone off on the side here.
Which is, of course, not necessarily true at all.
Right. And well, he's wrong. So I got to hand it to Craig. He did come up with a method of tapping all of these things, so clearing things faster. You didn't have to study all these different algorithms, and it saved people spending a lot of time studying with Roger Callahan. Enter Tapas Fleming. So Tapas Fleming comes along. She's an acupuncturist, and she came up with something called the Tapas acupressure technique. And basically, you're using only one technique. Now, in Chinese medicine, the bladder pours junk, qi, or energy out of the system. I'm just saying what they say. The bladder meridian is center of forehead and the start of both eyebrows. And she would get people to put their middle finger
right between your
little higher,
like right between your eyes, but a little bit above.
Well, here, no, I'm showing you 3 spots. So there's like the third eye spot in the middle of the forehead, and then down here a bit lower. She touched 3 points at once, let's say.
Okay, you guys can't see what Mike's doing.
If you want to learn more, buy her excellent materials. The other hand is put on the back of the head. And all you would do is think of the problem and just wait there until your hands just naturally came down or you felt the urge to remove them. And things like allergies disappeared. And I know this because she took Larry Nim's allergy away by doing this.
Interesting. Okay.
So she's just draining the bladder meridian. How this ties into hypnosis specifically is old school hypnotists like Jerry Kine and others would tap on your forehead when you're abreacting. That's all right. You know, the scene fades, tend to your breathing. Tapping on the forehead drains the bladder meridian. And you can check this. I will say, at least for me, if I'm having a shower and I turn rinsing my hair and the water hits full on my forehead there, suddenly got to urinate. Because it's hitting and stimulating the bladder meridian. We'll edit that out.
Well, now call it the Mandel bladder.
Now we've got 2 more steps to go before we give something useful here.
Okay.
Now, so enter Be Set Free Fast and Larry Nims. Be Set Free Fast is itself, BSFF, Be Set Free Fast is itself an acronym.
Right.
Behavioral and emotional symptom elimination training for resolving excess emotions, fear, anger, sadness, and trauma. Something like that. Yeah, something like that.
It's huge.
Yeah, and the bottom line is he didn't do any tapping on anything because Nims was one of the first to discover, a wonderful man, classical psychologist. He's one of the first to discover that once you've stimulated these points by tapping, say you had a panic attack somewhere, and you were in a crowded room, you didn't have to tap them. You could imagine tapping them and imagine feeling them, and you get exactly the same result.
Well, this actually goes back to the concept that your unconscious mind does not know the difference between a real experience and one that is vividly imagined.
Right, that's a model. And the Chinese medicine model says you move qi in your system by thinking too. So there you go. Bottom line is it worked. So he created this method where you'd have a cue word, a code word like freedom or victory or whatever it is. Or
victory, I like that.
Go girl is what one woman used.
Go girl.
And you set this all up through an installation. You say to your unconscious mind, every time I use this cue word, whether I say it, write it, or even think it, you will immediately remove all the problem that is there and all the roots. And so you just be saying this cue word repeatedly. So I feel nervous, freedom. And then you wait and you breathe. And again. And then there was a closing sequence you do, I don't think this will work. I don't believe this will work. And it became fairly complex, but it was no doubt very, very effective. And Nims called it an energetic system. An energetic method. I'm not 100% sure of that. I did study with Larry Nims. I was one of the very first people certified in Be Set Free Fast in Oakland, California with Craig Tutton and Ron Berrigan. And we were the very first Canadians. And I used it for a while, but I found quicker methods after that. Now, that leads us to Faster EFT, which is Robert Smith's method. Faster EFT, Smith did a very clever thing, and I applaud him for this. He found you didn't have to tap these 13 points of EFT. He reduced it to 5. You're going to tap the center of the forehead, tap outside corner of the eye, near the corner of the eye itself, under the eye, collarbone just off center on the underside, and then slap the wrist or squeeze the wrist.
Grab the wrist.
About 4 or 5 acupuncture meridians run. These are all classical acupuncture points. And interestingly, if you don't hit the right ones, it doesn't work. So he was just having the person think of this. He'd set up a metaphor. If I pull out a plant, including all the roots, and leave it there in the sun, what'll happen? The person says it'll wither and die. So he's setting up the metaphor here that he's going to pull this out with all the roots. And now he'll get the person to talk about it, and they just say, let it go, and they tap these 5 things, let it go. Then they take a deep breath, they relax and say peace, which re-anchors the word peace every time, which is very clever. He's an NLP guy as well. And the things were disappearing. Problems were disappearing. So he called it Faster EFT. And I believe he was right. Which now leads us to the last one. The one that Chris and I use. And it's Mandel 6-step tapping. It is I believe, in my humble opinion, as an egotistical maniac, I believe it
but
is.
you admit it, so it's okay.
It's somehow okay at some level. I think it's an improvement on Robert Smith's method because
you've just added one
I've added 1 point. The reason why is it only takes about 6 seconds longer to do it, which is negligible. even in a short lifespan, except maybe a housefly. And when you tap on the 6th spot, you're starting the sequence by tapping the very center of the very top of the head. In
anxiety.
Hinduism, it's the crown chakra. In Chinese medicine, it's the anxiety spot. In fact, if you're anxious, just tapping the very center of the top of your head about 50 times, several times a day will discharge the anxiety. It just works.
Why don't we take people through a real example now?
What a great example.
So that while they're listening, they can pick something that's bothering them, and then we can walk through all the points. We'll just do one round of it.
Let's do that.
And we'll teach so you start with your issue.
So think of something that's bothering you. What are you going to call it? You've got to give it a name. And it's best if you do, because the name you give it is going to resonate with you. So if you're doing this with a client, resist the temptation to tell them to choose the word. Now, how powerful is this, first of all? I just did a training.
Resist the temptation to pick the word for them, I think is what you mean to say.
Right.
Let them pick their own word.
Let them pick. What did I say?
You said resist the temptation to tell them to pick their own word.
Well, resist the temptation to correct your business partner on a podcast going to the frickin' planet, making him look like a dick. Now listen. We're at work right now. Whoa, this stuff really comes out.
Okay, so let's say that somebody...
You let them choose the word. Now, I just want to say, 2 weeks ago, I was teaching for 2 days in Minnesota, as Chris knows. And for a corporation there, Nexstar, which is a fine corporation, amazing training thing. We got a guy in the class who'd had a phobia of heights, a terror of heights for 25 years. His name was Nick. He wouldn't mind me saying this. And we erased it. Actually, the system is so effective. I just taught them how to do it. They did an exercise with each other. And someone else working with him who'd never done this, none of them had any exposure to these tapping regimens, removed his fear of heights in about the 5-minute time we worked on it. Okay. He went and tested it. So
let's use that as our example.
You don't have to believe in it. So we take him to the thing. We say, tell me about your fear of heights. Oh, I feel just an anxiety. And I'm looking at the person closely, if it were me doing it with him. And I'd say, where do you feel it in your body? Like, talk about it. How bad is it out of 10 right now? Now, I don't want him to say, oh, when I'm up on top of, the CN Tower in Toronto, I feel like I'm going to have a heart attack. I want him to see how bad he can make it right now. And you know my theory on this, Chris.
Imagining it, right.
But what does that do?
Oh, it puts the ego state into the executive.
Bingo.
That ego state of being afraid of heights is now suddenly driving the bus of that guy's brain.
Brilliant, Chris.
And you want to get the number out of 10 because that's called subjective units of distress. All doctors and stuff use this too. So this isn't original to hypnosis.
You want him to get the number out of 10. You don't want it to be what you said.
It's what he
What
picks,
Chris just said was you want him to pick a number out of 200 and narrow it down to 10. And that's just wrong.
What? I didn't say that.
Trying to get back at you. Okay, so listen. We'll edit that out.
So maybe he says, oh, I can get it to a 6.
Yeah, we say push it as high as you can. Now, if he's pushing it higher, it does two things. It both maintains that
ego state,
evaded ego state in the executive, and it shows him he's got control over it. So he can, okay, I can get it to an 8 now. My hands are starting to sweat. Okay, so what are you going to call it? Heights. I just want to call it heights. Okay, tap on the top of your head.
Now let's be very descriptive about the points because they can't see us.
So here are the 6 points, right in the very center of the very top of your head. So if you're standing as tall as you can, imagine something about the size of a quarter in the very center of the top of your head. And you're going to tap with your dominant hand with all your fingers. So you're not going to miss it. You're not going to try to get it with one finger. So you tap the top of your head loud enough, hard enough that you can hear it, but not hard enough to bruise. Is the general rule. So you're just going to tap while you say, in his case, he'd say, heights. I got a fear of heights, or whatever it is. So he taps that. Now he taps in the very center of his forehead, holding his 4 fingers in a vertical line. So the 4 fingers are running top to bottom. Then you're sure to hit it. And he says, fear of heights. And he taps that
tapping in the center
times.
of the forehead.
Now he goes to the outer corner of either side. These are bilateral. Doesn't matter which side you use or if you switch back and forth.
The bone on the outer eye.
Bone on the outer corner of the eye, right near the eye, though, and near the temple. So you, again, using all 4 fingers in a line, you're sure to hit it. You tap in the outer corner of the eye and say, this fear of heights, then directly under the eyeball on the edge of the cheekbone, below the orbit, below the eye itself. So you're tapping on the cheekbone right below the eye with all 4 fingers saying fear of heights, same word. Now here's the only tricky one. You want to tap on the collarbone, on the under edge of the collarbone where it meets your sternum, your breastbone. So there's a curve on either side, just the underside of your collarbone close to the middle. Just tap there with your whole hand and say, fear of heights, he'd say. Now the last one is you either slap the inside of your wrist with your hand, as I'm doing now, or just squeeze your wrist where you don't have a watch or a bracelet. Squeeze it and say the same thing. Fear of heights, take a deep breath, relax and let go. You can say
some
peace.
Some people say peace.
Yeah, you don't need to, but you can. So now, you check again immediately. How bad is it out of 10 right now? Oh, the person will say, it's reduced. And you say, how bad out of 10? And they'll say, oh, it's way less. And
Make them give you a number.
It's a 2. Just do it again. I love what Robert Smith says. He says, people say, how many times do I do it? He said, until it's gone or you pass out, whichever's first. So then he runs this a couple of times. Can you get any of it back? You want to zero it every time. Can you get any of it back? Yes, I can if I think of looking out the window. How high is it? Surprisingly, it's only a 4. Okay, say looking out the window. Let go of looking out the window. Let go of that fear looking out the window. Tapping on all 6 points.
This is what we mean, by the way, by roots. Getting all the roots of it, right?
Yes.
So, well, what else is there?
Can you get any of it back? Any other way of looking at it? And where you'll find it complex is if you're doing a spider phobia. I've done a number of them, and I agree with Gary Craig. It appears to be the most difficult phobia. Not that it's any harder to get rid of.
Lots of layers.
Yeah, just lots of layers. Black spiders, scary spiders, jumping spiders, giant spiders, spider webs, poison spiders, black widow spiders, whatever it is. But remember, this isn't just for phobias. This is for any negative emotion. And this becomes a first aid toolkit you can apply absolutely
So
anywhere.
Let's go through a couple of quick examples of just rapid fire.
You run one, Chris, so I know you understand it while I drink this coffee.
Now, I'm not going to run through the how to use it because you already know. You've just listened to Mike explain it and me throw in a few hilarious side points. But you can throw this at anything. So let's say that bad argument that I had with my business partner over correcting him on a podcast. You know, it made me feel horrible.
Or yelling at your lovely daughters, Dulcinea and Fallon.
Yeah, or, turning off the hot water when my daughter was taking too long of a shower and I went down to the basement and turned the hot water tank off. Okay, I didn't really do that.
Which daughter? Was it Hendrix or Clapton?
No, I didn't actually do that, but I used to do that to my little sister when she'd be taking a shower. I'd run down to the basement and I'd turn off the hot water tank just like such a jerk, right? So if I wanted to tap on that because it's traumatized me because now she hates me. No, I'm kidding. She doesn't hate me, but you all play pranks on people.
I can help you with this, buddy.
So you pick anything. It could be anything as, forgetting to do something that was really important to somebody else. It could be that time that you got in a fight and you got beat up and now you're traumatized because you feel weak or ineffective or whatever it is.
Any negative emotion. And this is great to use with kids. You can tap on your kids, your own kids, not somebody else's. But, if your daughter woke up and she had a bad dream, right? A nightmare. She can tell you about it. You can tap, whether it's either of your kids, Phobos or Deimos, you could do this and completely eliminate the fear. The beauty of it is I switched to Greek there. For Phobos and Deimos both mean fear and terror.
Yes, yeah. Fear and terror.
It's so cool to be me.
Okay, so there you go. That is the method. We've gone through all the history and all the way through to the Mandel 6-step tapping, which if you need help on this, just go and look on YouTube for Robert Smith, Faster EFT.
Yeah.
And then just add at the very beginning,
the
top of the head. And then you have your method. It's really, really easy to do.
In fact, anyone who sends us an email at info@mikemandelhypnosis.com, we will send you the cheat sheet on it if you want.
Sure. Okay. Awesome. Easy enough.
Now, we need to...
Thanks for creating a whole bunch of work for me.
No, I'll send it because I get that same email.
Oh, yeah, you do.
I've got the cheat sheet.
Now you're responsible.
Now, a word from our sponsor.
All right. The year was 1967. The Jimi Hendrix Experience were the masters of psychedelic music. The Beatles released Sgt. Pepper, and Virgil Gus Grissom was driving a red Corvette Stingray. And best of all, it was the year that inventor Richard Dick Shizjig, while sitting in a grain elevator, would design the world's first ant-proof caster. Long sick and tired of being sick and tired of ants ruining everything, Dick Shizjig created the caster that won him the Nobel Prize. Since then, businesses and roller derby arenas from Colon, Michigan to Intercourse, Pennsylvania have all used Shizjig casters. Remember, when ants are the issue, and they usually are, insist on Shizjig. They're 100% ant-proof.
Shizjig is a large, important company with headquarters in New York City and factories filled with happy, indentured workers in China, Malaysia, and North Korea.
So back to the show.
Well, buddy, I'm interested in the results people get with this. And we now need to teach remember I said the top of the head alone will get rid of anxiety.
Oh, yes.
So let's talk about the antidepressant tap on. I said antidepressant tap in our notes here, but it's not the top of the head. It's the one on the back of the hand.
Oh, right. Okay.
So the top of the head is a great one to use just for anxiety, just to keep depotentiating anxiety. If you're an anxious person, tapping it about 50 times, several times a day. See what happens. We're not telling you to do this. We're just telling you that we've seen other people do this.
Yeah, and I also want to point out that if you think let's say you're in public and you're feeling anxious about something, and you don't want to start tapping on your head because you're going to look like a loony. Just put your hand on your head. Let's say rest your elbow on the desk or something. Put your hand on your head. Just rub it. Just rub the spot.
Well, the other thing, Chris, is I've told people in the past when they even learn the 6 step. I had a young poetess come in from Vancouver, as you know, to work with me. And I just told her if she starts having panic attacks, this is a woman who carried Ativan for panic attacks in 2 places, one in her pocket, one in her purse, in case she lost one.
Right.
And she would just run into a public washroom and say, oh, just a minute, she's in a restaurant. Just do the tapping in the stall and come back and be totally normal.
Exactly.
So that's what stalls are for.
That's what they're for. Tapping and reducing depression and anxiety in this case. Okay, let's talk about
the positive installation, because this is why this works. It's also the antidepressant tap.
Okay, so which kind of makes sense, because if you think about depression as being in the opposite state of peak performance.
Right. And we're not telling you, we don't treat depression. We're not telling you what to do if you're depressed. We're just telling you that people have told us they've had great results with this if they're feeling sad or
so
down
if you
or
want to feel awesome, all you have to do is essentially create a grocery list, like a shopping list.
Always check with your doctor first.
How do you want to feel?
If your doctor permits.
Yeah, there you go. You're going to keep doing that?
Yeah.
That's hilarious.
No, I've done enough.
So while you're calling these things into your brain, these things that you want, I want to feel amazing.
Calling these things into your brain, is that a scientific term, Chris?
I don't even know. But here's what you're going to do. You're going to tap on one particular spot. If you were to look, and it's very hard for me to describe this visually, but let me just say, find your last 2 knuckles. So ring finger knuckle and baby finger knuckle. The ones, not the knuckles. What do you call them?
The last knuckles at the back of your hand.
The big knuckles. The
punching knuckles.
Yeah, the punching knuckles.
Yeah.
So find those 2 punching knuckles on your ring finger and your baby finger, and go backwards about, I would say it's not even an inch.
Move towards your wrist.
You're looking for the spot, the soft spot, towards your wrist, right between those 2 knuckles. And you'll find a little
if that wasn't sufficiently complex for you, put your hand flat. Look at your baby finger and your ring finger. With your hand palm down on a table, between your baby finger and your ring finger, follow them up into the back of your hand. You'll find a channel between the 4th and 5th metacarpal, between the bones in your hand, where the ring finger and the baby finger lead in. The channel is about 2 fingertips wide. Tap in there with your dominant hand.
So you start tapping on that spot as you simply
relaxed.
Say to yourself, I'm feeling happy.
I'm feeling awesome.
I am in a great mood.
I'm supercharged.
People love me.
My brain is incredible.
I'm good enough.
I'm
smart enough.
I feel fantastic.
And gosh darn it, people like me.
All my resources are online.
I'm amazing. I'm funny.
I'm running.
Smart.
I'm in the zone.
I'm in a good mood.
Fantastic. I feel just awesome.
I'm looking forward to today.
I get everything I need to make today fantastic.
That's right.
You say it as though you mean. He's still tapping. You say it as though you mean it, even if you don't. And this guy's already in a great state.
Yeah, there you go. So
funny thing is that just worked.
I know, it's really weird. So do this stuff. Mike, we said that we would talk about it a little bit before we end the podcast.
Yeah.
When it comes to the energetic models and is this science or is this woo-woo, what's your take on people who think, well, this is kind of weird?
It's definitely weird. It's absolutely weird.
Are we claiming we understand exactly how this works?
Not a clue. In fact, you and I are both empirical rationalists, Chris. We believe that you really need experimentation for a lot of things. But remember, true science will follow the evidence wherever it leads, whether we like it or not. Mm-hmm. And the bottom line is, if you do this, you'll probably get awesome results because thousands and thousands of people worldwide have. Now, the Chinese medicine model says you're redistributing qi, the Chinese subtle energy system in your body. Interestingly enough, all of these points are acupuncture points that have been around for hundreds, if not thousands of years. And I have tested this on 2 occasions working with actual clients. One was a young Armenian girl who had a terrible fear, agoraphobia, the fear of going out. It got worse and worse over time. As it does, it contracts. Finally, she couldn't go out the front door of her house. And the other was a rock star I worked with, one of the 3. And by tapping these points, they were getting amazing results. And I was changing it up. And I said, okay, do this tapping regimen now. And I completely made up an algorithm on the fly. And both of them said, no, that didn't do anything. Now, they don't know anything about these points. cued it in advance. It must be these. But as soon as I change it to made up points, like now tap the first knuckle of your right hand, now the elbow, nothing happened. Nothing. I switch back to this and bang, it's dropping really fast again. So I don't understand why it works, but the test of any model, as John Grinder said, is its usefulness. And this is an extremely useful model. You don't have to believe in it. Remember I said, Chris, there was a 3.5-year-old boy from Oakville, Ontario. His father brought him in because this poor little boy would suck his thumb so much it became raw and would bleed from under the nail. Couldn't stop him and tried stop and grow, cayenne pepper. Nothing worked. And his father just held him. And I just got him to say, I suck my thumb, but I'm a good boy. And every time he said that, I just tapped on these points about 5 or 6 times. Well, his dad held him, and he just stopped sucking his thumb from that moment on. Now, there's no suggestion. The person doesn't know.
And it's interesting to point out here, you didn't have him say, I will stop sucking my thumb. No. You had him affirm that
the behavior,
he sucks his
problem
thumb.
behavior. The interesting thing is I like what Robert Smith is saying about this now. And I don't understand a lot of this, but I've used it for 25 years. 20 years. What he says that I find so interesting, Chris, is he said this, oh, you're going to love this one, defractionates people.
Whoa.
Think about it. You go into trance and come out, each time you go deeper. He's saying every time you do this, you're removing a layer of trance that's maintaining it.
Oh, that's interesting. So for those people who are hypnotists, you understand fractionation, for example, opening and closing your eyes can take you deeper into trance. So defractionating is sort of like
removing layers of trance.
Getting rid of those layers of garbage trance for the old behavior.
It's clever, isn't it?
Old automatic behaviors too. Okay, very cool. So to wrap it up, these are models. We don't know with any certainty what the true science is, what's actually happening in the brain. We do know that the brain, the muscles, the whole body works as an electrical system. Electricity, as current moves, is energy.
Yeah.
Right? Therefore, when we call this an energy system, we don't mean woo-woo energy. We actually mean electricity is moving in your body and doing, quote, something.
I don't know what it is, buddy.
But play around with it. See if you get results. When I first learned this stuff, I thought it was weird, and I did it anyway, and it worked.
Well, Chris will verify. I had a really bad fall on the stairs the other day. I tripped, caught my toe.
So you say.
Shut up. You best. I landed on my hand, bent my knuckles way back between the stairs, jarred my back, jarred my neck. I was just short of thinking I had to go to the doctor. Hurt my knee, which has already been a problem. And just slammed down really hard in the stairs. I'm just trying to get sympathy now by still talking about it. So what? It's not working, is it?
And you started tapping? And
no, I didn't.
You grew an entire new hand.
Yes, correct. The problem is it's in the middle of my forehead. So I went to I thought, this is just about bad enough to go to the doctor. The next day, it was worse. You know when you injure something, the next day there's trauma.
Oh, sure.
Especially with soft tissue that's torn and stretched and so on. So I felt terrible the next day. And I felt so bad. My wife went out to get me Arnica 1M. Arnica 1M was told to me by Michelle Bodner, who's my niece and a naturopath. And it's so diluted, Chris. If you take 12C, 12 parts per 100, there's no molecules of the original substance left, Avogadro's number. But Dr. Lockie, who's an OBGYN out of Scotland, says that magnetic resonance imaging will show that there's still an imprint of the original substance there, even though it's only water or sugar molecules. Anyway, bottom line, I took 1 dose of Arnica 1M, got up the next day, 90% better. I couldn't believe it. I said to my wife, I've never had such an amazing result. Why am I saying this?
Yeah, what does this have to do with
believe
tapping?
Homeopathy and tapping work on the same principles.
Interesting.
They're getting to the energetic system and freeing blocks.
Interesting.
And if you'd free all your blocks, you'd understand this a bit better.
Yeah, as you know, I know almost nothing about homeopathy.
It's all right, buddy.
So, all right. So try the tapping. Try it as an experiment. When we say try, remember, try generally remains fail.
And always check with your doctor before doing any of these things.
Mike, I just said try remains fail. Try usually implies failure. So if I say try to get rid of that depression, try to feel happy, that's not a useful thing for me to say. But if I say try this restaurant to see if you like the food, that is an encouraging thing, and it's experimentation. So try this method means experiment with this method. See for yourself what results you get.
And you know, kids are the best with this. Teach it to your kids. They have no problem with it. Empower your kids to get rid of negative emotions. And I'm recommending, Chris, that you go right to Pterodactyla and Rampharinca and teach them immediately. I've used like 4 different
dinosaurs
sets of kids' names.
Okay. All right, so that is
I'm
it.
a comic genius.
That is it for podcast 93.
No, it isn't.
Everybody.
We need the empowering question.
I know. Well, that's what I was going to next. I was about to say that is it for podcast 93. So let's move to the empowering question so that we can begin the wrap up. Here it is for you. What negative emotions will I focus on zeroing completely, and how awesome will I feel when they're gone? So what negative emotions will I focus on zeroing completely? And as I review those negative emotions, such as fear, anger, sadness, and trauma, which ones will I clear today? And how amazing will my life become when that happens? All right, you got a metaphor?
Nice one. Yeah, it's a short one. It's called The Metaphor of the Standing Ovation and the Radiator.
I'll be the judge of that.
In 1975, I was doing my first hypnosis show. So this month marks my 44th anniversary on January the 29th. And I was doing one of my first hypnosis shows. I had maybe a dozen under my belt. It was a university, or a college, actually, a community college in Southern Ontario. And it was in a nice room the seats were elevated going up to the back. And I was off in the wings. There was a hallway where I waited. They introduced me. I did the show. The show kicked butt. I mean, it really did. And I went rushing off stage, as I do at the end, to try to get away from every human being, rushing around. And they gave me this frickin' standing ovation. And as I ran off stage, I slipped with these boots I was wearing. And slid right under a frickin' radiator.
Like a floor radiator?
Yeah, like the electric heating thing. Yeah. My heel of my boot jammed under it, and I couldn't get up. And they're all giving me standing ovation and yelling and thinking that I'm this prima donna who won't come out and acknowledge them. And meanwhile, I've got security trying to haul me up from behind this radiator. So... Okay, so go ahead.
All right, so just to disclose, even I have no idea what the heck the purpose of that metaphor was.
Give it some thought.
All right, I know I'm kidding around. I get it. All right, thanks everybody for listening to Brain Software episode 93 with Mike Mandel, and I'm Chris Thompson. Make sure you head on over to MikeMandelHypnosis.com/events.
Yes. Scary thing we didn't have a wacky ending? Warrington reversal. Scary, I think we did.